The wacky world building of early Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm assuming this is Duel Monsters. Oh boy, Duelist Kingdom, Battle City, that was my jam. But let's see what Mother's Basement has for us today.
It can be easy to forget after watching the series spend decades basking in the global spotlight, but unlike most of its toy anime contemporaries, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was not originally conceived as a means of shoveling merch down the throats of gullible millennials.
No, it really wasn't. In fact, the Duelist Kingdom rules were very, very loose, as indicative of that. I see the GX merch back there. I see the Recalcos dual disc. Oh, I'm so jealous of that. I can't wait for us to actually get marketable dual discs that we can use.
Before it inadvertently spawned one of the most powerful media empires of the 21st century,
Yeah.
Kazuki Takahashi's only goal with Yu-Gi-Oh! Was to tell a story. A really weird story that somehow only got weirder as it mutated into the marketing monster we know today. Yu-Gi-Oh! In its original form was a crudely rendered Shonen Jump horror manga about a meek Japanese teenager who solved an ancient Egyptian puzzle and was subsequently possessed by the angry spirit of a long-dead pharaoh.
Isn't this Season 0 content? Because it didn't start with Duel Monsters. Duel Monsters actually came from the Season 0 content, which actually was super dark.
That dark ghost exacts vengeance on those who hurt his host by being really good at analog games. And when I say analog games, what I really mean is murder with extra steps.
Yeah.
Okay, to be fair,
it's not wrong. God. Some of the stuff I've seen and heard from Season 0, because I've never fully watched Season 0, I'd love to. Oh, God. Like, it is a trip.
Sometimes the Egyptian revenge ghost only punishes bullies by driving them to permanent insanity with dark sorcery, but he just straight up kills a heck of a lot of them. Like that one, admittedly kind of justified
YouTube, this is clearly fake and art form. This is not a real implement.
time he tricked an escaped convict with a gun into soaking himself in vodka and lighting himself on fire to save Teia's life, or that other, slightly less justified time he challenged a classmate to a game of air hockey but on a hot okonomiyaki griddle with a puck made of ice and explosives.
Why?
To settle an argument over which class would get the best culture festival booth. Also, this one guy
Culture Festival truly built different. Oh my God.
dies because a perverted talking baby shits in his lap while he's hooked up to a real-ass electric chair on a haunted house ride, which is part of the extended version of the first episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, where instead of just kidnapping his grandpa for cardboard, Kaiba builds an entire indoor theme park solely to murder Yugi as revenge for beating him at a card game.
Man, who else but Seto Kaiba, though? Like, really? Who else but Seto Kaiba? That man has way too much money, and I love him.
Once. This, you will soon see, was not a waste of 10 billion yen, or approximately $100 million, but rather a phenomenally forward-thinking business move. After that arc, it said, kids started writing into Shonen Jump asking where they could learn more about Duel Monsters or even play it. And in that avalanche of letters, Jump and Takahashi saw an opportunity to...
God, I know most of these structure decks, actually. Holy crap, I've been in this game a hot minute. Oh, wow.
Potentially make the next Pokemon.
For those of you that don't know, like, I don't have... So, we don't really play in Idaho anymore. Like, where I'm at in Idaho, no store is hosting it anymore due to quote-unquote unsustainability. Like, I can't even find small, like, sleeves anymore. I can't find JP-size card sleeves, so I have to order them from Amazon now. Like, yeah, I'm an avid Yu-Gi-Oh! Player. Hate going to LGSs, and my opponent always has Miscellaneous Saurus or Called by the Grave every single hand. I mean, I really love the game. Just don't really have people to play it with.
After a pretty kick-ass send-off arc
Brandon.
that introduced Bakura in a massive tabletop RPG showdown for the souls of Yugi's friends, they gave the manga a soft reboot, making it entirely about the card game. We all know how this turned out from a business perspective. Yeah. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of the most profitable media franchises in history and closely trails Pokemon and Magic as the third most popular card game.
Yes, it's one of the big three. If you're making a card game, you have to compete with Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and I almost said L5R. Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and Yu-Gi-Oh! To me, L5R, Legend of the Five Rings, and the Naruto CCG, which I both still have functioning decks for, were the only two that I really ever saw that could rival my love for any of those. I don't play Magic anymore. It's whatever. Like, the people here are pretty bad. I'm very picky locally, let's put it that way, with who I play Magic with, just because of certain people in the certain people in the I almost said industry, certain people in the community. Pokemon's it's whatever. I just don't want to like, I don't know. I want to play with adults, if that makes sense. So Yu-Gi-Oh's been the next best one that I played, and generally there's been pretty cool people, but there's also been people that are super sleazy. But you get that in any community. L5 Dragon. I was Scorpion. I played God, because you know what I'm talking about. I always get excited when I hear about other L5R players. So I started an Emperor. I just missed Celestial. I started about when the Genpuku boxes were coming out, and I was playing Scorpion. I played. Oh god, well, I think I played a Ninja. I played Odoro States, and Ninja was pretty bad. Aurora was a good buff at the time to the archetype. Aurora Sawaki, Goju Sawaki, the ninja that splits into two, he's Spider Clan, was pretty good. We also had Shadow Dragon in the format, who was kind of cool, but he's better and extended with Dark Path of Shadow. I think then I moved over to Crane for a little bit. I did Twin Fork City Duelist is what I still have for Crane. And then I think I went over to Law of Darkness Dojo, I think was the one. It was the political one, the political dishonor one. The intrinsic trait, you lose 2 honor. So people have no idea what I'm talking about. I promise this game was next level. And I'm very upset that it has died twice now. Because the LCG also died. So I am Scorpion. I can swim. That's all you're getting. Sound off in the comments if you know what I'm talking about.
In the world. But from an artistic perspective, this business decision did some profoundly wacky things to the story and world building in particular of Yu-Gi-Oh! Any plans Takahashi had for his characters and world had to be reworked to focus on Duel Monsters.
Fishy, thank you for the 25 gifted subs. Holy crap. Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
And the sudden shift from a scattershot board game of the week formula to a heavily serialized narrative about a single game meant the mangaka had to make a lot of shit up as he went along.
Right, yeah.
A lot of people like to focus on the ridiculous rules he came up with for Duelist Kingdom in particular, and boy, some of those sure are silly.
Thank you. I hope you're enjoying the YouTube content. I definitely appreciate the gifted subs.
Infamous Catapult Turtle Gambit is really just the tip of the iceberg.
Catapult Turtle wasn't even the worst one, though. I think that, like, oh god, what was it? You had the Weevil one that was burning the forest, which changed the terrain type, and Mirror Force doing something in that. And then you had the I'm going to attack the moon bit. Every time I go back through Duel Monsters, you have to understand, I about have an aneurysm every single time that I go through Duel Monsters. I have an aneurysm. You have a friend in Boise that played L5R with me before. I used to play with a lot of the Boise, Idaho crew. That's not doxing my current location. I used to go to the Boise, Idaho, Meridian, Idaho crew, and I actually did have people that would go to the Cotes in, I think it was Seattle. So in this area, if they played L5R actively, I probably knew them.
To me, that zaniness pales in comparison to what happened to the series setting. Takahashi had to find a way to take the visual excitement of monsters coming to life in shadow games and make it a universal aspect of the series, or else it would just be a lot of dudes dramatically placing paper on tables.
Yeah.
He couldn't exactly give every character a Millennium item without completely changing what he had planned for the manga's ending, so instead, Kaiba Corp's solid vision hologram system had to become a ubiquitous part of the setting.
And it's cool. So even then, even in a setting where it's not technology focused, let me turn my light real quick. Even in a setting that's not technology focused, even if you had it as just you are having a magical setting where, and they do have this in like the Pharaoh arc, right? Where when you go back to when you see the past and, the Pharaoh's they're playing on these tablets, right? Tablets in the shadow games, right? You're summoning the creature from this tablet or this card. It's a very, very good plot device as well as a mechanical device for the series itself. It's actually super cool. And then it translates over into the physical TCG, right? How many people are like, oh, well, they'll revere when they get like a Blue Eyes or a Slife of the Sky Dragon or even a Dark Magician because of what it represents to them, right? And it's such a cool device that was used literarily and translated over into the media of anime very well, into even the physical world, where you'll have people in hushed tones, they'll say like, how the god cards used to be so broken, and it's like, but as we went over in the DZ video, the god cards really weren't legal until I think it was Obelisk. It was a promo Obelisk, right? I think most of them weren't legal till one of the I think it was Battle Pack Epic Dawn, I think, was one of the releases. And then Slifer was the last one to get an actual full release. Like, oof. But yeah, no, it definitely had its own following and its own community built around this as a mechanic. It
had to happen
very good.
Frighteningly fast. The original version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Was set in real-world Japan, or at least a lawless facsimile thereof, where our teenage heroes could be physically attacked on a near-daily basis by bullies who want them to listen to bad karaoke, fake fortune-telling rapists, random street thugs, violent sneaker bandits, an escaped convict, a solid terrorist, a TV news producer doing a special on bullying who apparently couldn't wait the half hour it'd take for one of those other guys to show up, corporate goons, and random street thugs again, but this time with yo-yos. It was, in case I didn't make this clear enough already, a gloriously weird manga, and it continued to be gloriously weird long after its Pokemon-inspired pivot. But it was at least somewhat grounded in the recognizable reality of the late 90s, until suddenly, in the space of just a few months, we've got an island full of massive holographic arenas, or less massive holographic glass battle boxes in manga's case, which are replaced just a few months after that by compact satellite-linked arm-mounted card game computers that can project monster holograms anywhere.
The Duel Disk is actually super cool. And I like that GX even leaned into it a little bit. And even modern series, right? They have their own variants of the Duel Disk. It was a necessary pivot for certain plot points, right? It's just such a cool design because you have something that is akin to a shield or is akin to, is a arm-mounted implement with a field on it. Do you know if someone linked me right now, right? Like, oh, this is a indie project that, I've totally bought a Duel Disk from them. People will sometimes show up to tournaments and they'll have fun off the tables, right? And it's like, I'd buy this in a heartbeat. I would do it. If Konami put out an official Duel Disk that you could use, I'd fucking do it. Kip, you'd look really weird. Yeah, I would look really weird, but I'd fucking do it. No, and I'd love to see these built. There definitely be a market for them. And I mean, I came from the GX era. GX is my jam. Let's put it that way. GX is definitely my jam. I'll DM you later, Doc, about that. Oh God, it's perfect. This was a very good visual and narrative device that upgraded the series into even more stardom, I would argue, because it's one thing to be sitting at a table, right? And you're looking at your keyboard or you're looking at your mouse, right? And you're just, we're just going to play through like you're playing in a tournament, right? It's another thing to have the field that you're playing on in such a visible and compact fashion at such ready access, being on their arms, right? And being able to just summon whatever you're summoning by slapping it on the Duel Disk. I absolutely love it. And I hope I've kind of like elaborated on why I like some of these things so much, because it's one of those things that people like it, but I don't think they really talk about why they like it so much.
They also conveniently allow Kaiba Corp to spy on anyone in the vicinity of a Duel Disk anywhere within the range of those satellites, which I'm sure would be pretty controversial if anyone ever found out about it.
Don't worry, it's Kaiba. He's got money. It's fine.
But Kaiba manages to keep that gross violation of privacy secret forever, which is pretty true to the horror roots of the manga, actually, and also a fairly prescient depiction of a tech billionaire for a story written in the year 2000. Though
I love that, man. He has way too much money. I love him. His interactions with Yugi, at Tem specifically, though, are just beautiful. Can we just appreciate that? It wasn't Bonds Beyond Time. What was the other movie, the canon movie? It wasn't the Egypt. It wasn't the Pyramid of Light. It was, you know what I'm talking about. It was the movie where with, what was his face? I can't remember the movie offhand. Was it Deva was the antagonist, right? And it was about the Pharaoh coming. No, it wasn't Bonds Beyond Time. Bonds Beyond Time was Jaden, Yusei, and Yugi teaming up against Paradox. It's not Pyramid of Light. It's the third one, the canon one. Dark Side of Dimensions, thank you. Yes, Dark Side of Dimensions, where Kaiba literally goes into the afterlife with a fucked off satellite to go and duel with his best bro Atem one more time. It's so good. I love this man and his dynamic with Atem. It's perfect.
Seto Kaiba actually invents the things he sells, so obviously it's not one-to-one. Kaiba, mostly driven by...
Oh yeah, by the way, that's a censorship. That's a 4-kid censorship.
He sells, so obviously it's not one-to-one.
They don't point at him in the Japanese version. That's a 4Kidsism, right? Oh god, it's so good.
One. Kaiba, mostly driven by a desire to win a card game against one guy, accelerates the technological development of the entire world to the point that the series goes from being a work of dark Egyptomania-fueled contemporary fantasy, Stardust Crusaders with slightly less punching, basically, in spring, to a full-blown proto-cyberpunk dystopian nightmare by fall.
Look, if we're already in the dystopian nightmare, at least give me dual discs. At least just give me, just make Yu-Gi-Oh! Reality at this point. I'm game.
As an aside, that cyberpunk story still leans heavily on horror-tinged Egyptian mysticism, which makes for a metal as fuck genre.
It does.
Mashup.
It's so
goofy
it goes
hair metal, to be sure, but metal
it goes so hard when these two combine in that way. It's so good. It goes so hard
nonetheless. And that blend lends itself to some pretty great filler arc concepts. In what other anime would you see evil corporate executives exacting vengeance for their termination via VR MMO isekai, alongside a story where an ancient Atlantean cult is stealing souls to resurrect their eldritch god? I mean,
God, the whole darts arc. I don't think I finished it. I know most of what happens though. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, episode to episode, these arcs are a drag. They completely ruin a lot of characters, and dropping one of them in the middle of the Battle City finale was an odd choice. But the underlying...
Which one did they drop? I don't remember hearing about this. What one did they drop? I'm definitely missing context.
Ideas there are really cool. I digress, though. Kaiba and Kaiba Corp are absolutely terrifying by the series' end, but to fully understand how they got there, we must also look at the meteoric rise of Maximilian Pegasus and industrial illusion.
Pegasus is such a playboy, and I love that man. I could not pull off the red suit like he does, but oh god, he is a playboy. He is chef's kiss. I love him.
See, another interesting and short-lived aspect of the Yugiverse in 1996 is the fact that people in it do things other than play the only game, like read comics or watch pornography. On VHS, by the way.
Wait, what? Hold up, my brain had a 404 there. What happened?
Like, read is the fact that people in it do things other than play the only game, like read comics or watch pornography. On VHS, by the way. They were still using VHS tapes when Kaiba invented holograms.
Don't worry about it. It's just VHS. So I think I kind of like that they in GX they like leveled up the campiness, so to speak, because like the Princeton family, Chaz's brothers, are talking about how like what is it? It's entertainment, politics, and dueling are the big three things in the world. And I'm just sitting there like, it's so campy. Can you just fucking imagine? Like, and speaking from an apolitical standpoint, right? Any political issue, right? Any big movie releases like by Disney, Marvel, etc., right? And then you have like a child's card game that is on equal footing and equal influence as these other things, and I'm just like, it's so campy. I love it. God.
Duel Monsters is already a big hit in America by the time Kaiba and Yugi first square off in the manga. Like, about 10% of the entire US population, circa 1996, plays it, which perhaps explains how Pegasus was able to buy a whole island and build a castle on it. But in Japan, at least, it's still just taking off, and people still play other games, like Pop-Up Pirate, Rock'em Sock'em Robots, but with monsters, Chess, but with monsters, not Virtua Fighter, and not Digimon. By the start of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist in early 1997, though, every other game has all but vanished entirely. Duel Monsters is all anyone does or talks about ever, and the lone attempt we see to launch a competing game, Dungeon Dice Monsters, goes up in smoke almost instantaneously. In the anime, not even the direct backing of Industrial Illusions can help Duke Devlin's odd fusion of D&D and Chinchiro take off. Nobody wants to play anything but Duel Monsters. The game becomes so ingrained in pop culture, practically overnight, that by fall that year, nobody bats an eye when the entirety of Domino City is taken over by a battle royale tournament. And by
I think at that point, you could argue from a narrative standpoint, it makes people, nerds, people that love the game feel like they belong because everyone does it, right? It's kind of like, imagine if you're at a convention, right, and you just have a dual disc strapped to your arm, right? How many people would give you an approving nod, right? I mean, it develops its own community and culture because it's so widely accepted. Sure, it's marketing, you could argue, right? Where you have everybody talk about nothing but Duel Monsters, and, you know, yes, you're going to have Like especially when it came around to GX, right? How you have like each a new Neos on certain sets, right? And yeah, or even Bell from what was it, Phantom Darkness, right? And how this will tie into their marketing, right? I mean, yeah, you're gonna have things like that do line up, but it also, outside of a marketing standpoint, normalizes this culture, this community that all comes around over Duel Monsters. And to this day, like I found a TikTok creator that was talking about how they play Yu-Gi-Oh still, and I'm just like, I know I'm not the only one. It might be harder to find people, like it's harder to find people who play Halo nowadays, you know, but I mean, there's still a lot of us out there that will play the game and will discuss the game and the community, and there's still a lot of diehard fans out there. It's just very interesting how much this world building impacted the modern day.
2004, professional Duel Monsters is apparently a viable enough career path to support a cutting-edge private dueling academy with hundreds of students that also gets its own island. For perspective, we only started seeing esports school in like the last few years.
Wait, what? There's esports school? No, please go get an education. Please go get like high school diploma. If you want to go get like a certificate or a trade or a degree, please. Oh, that will burn you out. And it is a highly competitive industry with huge potential for fallout. Oh my God, please focus on getting education, history, mathematics, science. Oh.
All of those cover multiple different games. The implications of this are clear and, frankly, terrifying. After achieving a near-total multinational tabletop gaming monopoly in, at most, the 6 years between Pegasus taking the Millennium Eye and Duelist Kingdom, Duel Monsters just kept expanding.
It did, and that's why I like GX. It did have not just Duel Academy. They had, what was it, North Academy, where Jesse was actually from. Technically, though, he kind of got retconned into that, right? There's another academy somewhere else where Viper was at, right? And you have multiple competing academies, prestigious academies for Duel Monsters. It's so... I love GX. GX is prime 2000s, and I will forever love. But I also have a soft spot in my heart for original Duel Monsters. It's very 90s. And it's so good. I'm actually overdue on a watch for Duel Monsters now that I think about it.
More and more players and fans, spawning more and more jobs for pro players, game designers, and accessory manufacturers alike, until it became the dominant force of the entire global economy, not to mention global culture. Now, it's reasonable to say that this isn't entirely down to the game's success as a game. Duel Monsters is, after all, a modern revival of real ancient Egyptian magic, itself derived from an even older tradition lost beneath the waves of time, that allowed its practitioners to summon spirits, gods, monsters, and demons born from human souls to do their bidding.
Right.
And which could, in its most potent form, pierce the very veil between this world and the next, plus some other worlds besides.
I can't hear the word veil without thinking about the stupid Destiny 2 meme because of Lightfall. What is the veil? What does the veil mean? Game has ruined the word for me.
Those reality warping properties eventually turn the cards into a key component of the NRD system.
I actually heard that. I never finished 5Ds. I hear that 5Ds, the final season, goes super hard, actually. Because I know I was like, I almost said Roman Torchwick, that's Ruby, where with the Earthbound Immortals, I ended up stopping there just because it was getting harder to watch it on TV. So I will have to make my way through 5Ds because it is the end of the official canon of Duel Monsters GX 5Ds. And then you get into Zexal, and then that's alt timeline from my understanding. 5Ds is... It's interesting, and I want to watch it as a sequel. I want to watch it as the definitive end to the original timeline.
Synchro summoning driven perpetual motion generator that can power an entire city the size of Tokyo with plenty of energy left over to fuel card games on motorcycles. So, to be fair, there are more practical applications for Duel Monsters that go some way toward explaining its increasingly undue influence on the world around it. But to be balanced, all of that was discovered a long-ass time after Industrial Illusions achieved its simultaneous economic and cultural victory and fundamentally rewrote the rules of human society.
So, as you mentioned in chat, in regards to the complexity of modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yu-Gi-Oh! In modernity actually does have a problem of being incredibly complex. The worst thing that you can do to a player is hand them the little rulebook you get with a structure deck and say, here, this is how you play the game. That is not the case. I cite that the Guardian Chimera the fusion monster, Guardian Chimera Book of Moon interaction took several judges corroborating on public forum to finally get that decision. It's modern Yu-Gi-Oh has a problem in complexity. I think if you play something like the Speed Duel boxes, where it's a lot simpler, and it's I argue that the Speed Duel boxes are designed as an LCG. You just buy 3 and you have what you need, right? I would argue that that's a better way to play. Or even if you just go back to simpler forms of play, it's a very unforgiving game if you're not willing to sit there and read paragraphs of text and certain conditions, summoning restrictions, etc.
The fulcrum of all of that economic leverage was just one card game. Perhaps a supernaturally addictive game on account of the ancient soul magic. I would love to see the televangelists of Yu-Gi-Oh's America freaking out about that, but still, a card game. Even back in 1997, the Big Five, seasoned executives who built their fortunes through more traditional, non-card-based industrial wage and rent theft, could already see the writing on the Wall Street. They conditioned their sale of Kaiba Corp to Pegasus entirely on the already unfathomably successful CEO's ability to win one duel against one child.
Yeah.
And then when he didn't, the whole bajillion-dollar deal fell through, which turned out pretty well for Kaiba Corp in the long run, if not for those 5 guys specifically. Under Seto Kaiba's renewed stewardship, the company saw continued growth and success, which only makes sense given that Seto was the one with the foresight to pivot their whole business toward game and card game accessory development.
You notice that this game is merging politics, economics, sociology, psychology, esotericism, even religion in certain cases, ideology, philosophy, and it's all coming back to this crux of what this series is about, the card game, the Duel Monsters. It's very beautifully merged into one, and it's very cool to consider.
A choice that made the company exponentially more profitable than it ever was with its old business model, which was, arms manufacturing.
Yeah.
This act signaled the beginning of a swift end to the old military-industrial complex that had defined the 20th century. In its place arose the new trading card industrial complex.
Can you imagine? So that's such a cool thing, right? The military-industrial complex was ended to herald a literal children's card game. So what I'm hearing is when people say trial by combat, right, in the next, 20 years, you're going to get nerds like me that'll just pull out a dual disc and they'll just draw their 5. God. Oh, my God. This is the best timeline. You can't convince me otherwise. Going into... We're going to eradicate war in place of war. We're going to have a children's card game. Oh, my God. That would be the just pinnacle peak timeline.
That would similarly shape the 21st while causing similar amounts of human suffering until Yusei Fudo solved wealth inequality forever by getting one bridge built. Am I perhaps making a mistake by so closely scrutinizing the economic logic of this series?
Don't worry about it.
No,
it's fine.
Definitely not. Thanks to their head start in the gaming industry and a close connection with industrial illusions forged through Kaiba's early Duel Monsters tournament success, Kaiba Corp was able to ride the peak of that wave of change all the way to the bank, and then buy that bank and the bank next to it. Holy shit,
yeah.
They have so much money, it should be illegal.
Yeah.
Also, it should be illegal to have far smaller amounts of too much money, like all billionaires are parasites, but it is fun to talk about this harmless fake one.
The next time you catch yourself wondering about the great marvels of the
Oh my God, him.
and who's responsible, you'll have an answer. Better yet, a name.
Dark Side of Dimensions went way too hard. I loved it. Oh, it was so good.
And that name is Seto Kaiba!
He knows his marketing.
You know how, at the end of Battle City, Kaiba built a big, stupid, expensive-looking tower on his dad's old military base solely for the purpose of playing card games on it, and then blew the whole thing up after playing 3 card games there just to make a statement?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's barely even a flex for him.
Yeah.
You probably expect me to point to the company's ownership
for
of
him.
Duel Academy Island by the early 2000s as a sign of their immense success, but you need to understand that by that point in this story, private island money was chump change to Kaiba.
It really is. If anything, he probably uses it as a tax break. Pennies on the dollar for a tax break.
The Dark Side of Dimensions movie is set in 1999, 2 years after the end of the original manga, and by that time, with 90s technology, Kaiba's able to completely finance the research, development, and construction of a space elevator and attached orbital platform that's shaped like his company's logo because fuck you, who's gonna stop him?
F you, he's got money. He's gonna want the space station shaped like his brand.
This is in addition to the R&D money they were simultaneously spending to create a dimension-warping full-dive virtual reality system and developing fully sentient AI. Again, in a world that still uses VHS.
Don't worry about it.
And on that note, a significant portion of the orbital facility seems to have been built for the sole purpose of having one of those AI analyze the Millennium Puzzle down to a subatomic level and reconstruct it in a zero-G environment. All so that Kaiba could have one last grudge match against the Pharaoh and then definitely also do some other stuff with him after that.
It's the bromance is real. The bromance is just there. Oh god, the memes.
It's true. I went to a great deal of trouble recreating the Pharaoh's deck, strategies, even his perfectly coiffed hair.
Yep.
In fact, that part is what took the longest.
Yes, it was. Oh god, he stressed over every single hair strand. I know he did. Oh my god.
Barring a level of embezzlement that simply does not square with the long-term sustainability of his company, this means Kaiba has space station wing money set aside for entirely personal projects a good 6 years before GX even begins.
Yeah.
And he just keeps getting richer from there. A few decades later, Kaiba Corp has the resources to effectively
he would actually come back, yeah. So, because this is canon, and if GX hadn't even started yet, he went to the afterlife. He went to duel the Pharaoh, and he came back because we see him in GX. Oh my god, this man.
Model the entirety of Domino City, again, the Yugiverse equivalent of the world's largest city, Tokyo, into the fully dystopian Neo-Domino City that serves as the stage for 5Ds. Which is its own kinda cuckoo bananas, as is GX, but both were clearly
I was under the impression that Darkseid was canonical to the series. I was pretty sure they were in the same timeline, but I'm being told they're not. So I'm going to err on the side of caution that they wouldn't. Interesting.
As vehicles for Yu-Gi-Oh! As a product before they were stories, and there's just something about the strange confluence of genuine artistic intention and absolutely shameless brand exploitation we see in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! That makes its story and world feel special.
Oh my god, OG Blue Eyes art goes so hard, though. I love OG Blue Eyes art. I can't stand the newer ones. I mean, there's a couple ones that, like, I like them aesthetically. OG Blue Eyes art goes too hard, though.
In rising to meet the narrative needs created by an absurd and unprecedented economic opportunity, Kazuki Takahashi ended up building an absurd and unprecedented economy for his world. One that's only gotten more absurd as the series has continued in perpetuity and those needs have gradually overshadowed his original vision. Yet that vision of a dark tabletop gaming story driven by ancient magic and prophecies that is ultimately about the importance of the connections we make over the table still resonates in a very weird way. And after spending over 200 chapters selling pieces of cardboard with bits of text loosely inspired by the zany game rules he made up as he went along, Takahashi did get a chance to spend a year finishing the story he started, at least in some fashion. The final Millennium World arc of the manga is kind of a triumph. It returns the series' focus to magic and PG-13 horror and breaks away almost entirely from the hard rules of the card game, instead focusing on the more chaotic, unstructured ancient Egyptian monster battles that inspired it, which feel like a weirdly perfect intersection of Pokemon and stand battles.
That's cool.
It also revisits the hands-down coolest non-TCG concept from the original Season 0 manga, realizing it on a grand new scale in a compelling and immersive manner only made possible by the years Takahashi spent honing his art skills on the weekly shonen grind. And when it does finally return to the card game for one last hurrah, it is a real hurrah. A tense, for once truly uncertain feeling back and forth duel with interesting, well-thought-out strategies and counter-strategies that speak to the distinctive playstyles and personalities of both players.
Right.
A final reckoning between the timid boy who learned to be strong from the ancient hero who shared his heart, and the dark spirit who learned to maybe not murder so many people and also make some friends from a kind young man.
It goes so hard. It really does. I remember the final duel. I remember when that was airing, and Like, there's just so much here, and there's so much to glean from the writing. It's very well done. And, you know, a lot of it can just be, you know, any sort of conflict, any sort of fight, any sort of argument could just be replaced with a duel. I mean, in other forms of media like Naruto, right, where Naruto and Sasuke go on about when you fight each other, you can peer into each other's hearts. Think about that, but just with cards. Like, there's so much going on here, and it's just perfection.
It's a tight, personally satisfying ending for the characters that thankfully isn't influenced too much by the direction the rest of the franchise took, though in turn, of course, it doesn't have much influence on it. While Yugimoto and the Pharaoh were able to save the world from certain destruction at the hands of the Dark Lord Zork Necrophates, they were ultimately powerless to stop the Darker Lord, late-stage capitalism, from slowly consuming the society around them, leaving nothing but the only game and the holographic corporate surveillance network on which it runs.
God, that is quite... I need to laugh at that one for a second. God, that is a take of all time. Oh my God, it's perfect.
So when Yugi says he wants to make his own game one day in Dark Side of Dimensions, it reads as more tragically short-sighted than endearingly optimistic. He is unknowingly dooming himself to toil in fruitless obscurity, while, without his competition, Joey is probably looking at a decently bright future as a pro duelist. One of the only viable career paths that will be left in the coming years, but hey, let's cut him some slack. Like everyone who graduated in 1999, they really had no way of knowing.
Aww.
And I don't really know how to end this video beyond that depressing note. So, fuck, marry, kill Kaiba, Yami Yugi, and Duke Devlin. Leave your answers and detailed explanations in the comments below. And if you'd like to watch a less existentially horrifying video about either card games or world building, check out the videos on the left side of your screen now. I'm Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.
Absolute legend. No, that was good. That was actually really good. God, I was not expecting the parallels to come into late stage capitalism. Oh God. It's perfect. I needed that. That was nothing short of perfect. And while doubling the length of the video for this, thank you everybody for watching. What are your thoughts? What is your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh series? What is your favorite card? I can tell you by context. My favorite spell is probably super polymerization. Let's put it that way. What is your favorite series? Did you read Season 0? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.